This is a photo I took, I think it was last winter. Quite a low sun heading towards the horizon. We've got this nice strong light running straight down just on the right of centre, sort of silhouetting the foreground trees there on the right hand side. So let's have a look at the materials before I start. I've got the I've cut the handle again. It just feels massive, the handle. I couldn't get used to it, so I've cut it down just like my old one. It's the large Ron Ransonache, 3/4 inch flat, and a number 3 rigger. And we got if I want to do any scraping, I got a piece of card there and a Bob Ross knife here. Piece of tissue. Loads of new paint now, so I've got no excuses to run out. This is raw sienna. It's Cotman watercolour tubes, which I squeeze onto a palette and then allow to dry, and then I just wet them as I need them. Basically, they're always there whenever I want them. I ain't got to mess about squeezing paint out. Plus, I've also got the advantage doing it like this. Obviously, at the end of the painting, you'll have a load of spare paint left over, and it goes to waste. This way, you never waste any paint. But I've got ultramarine, lemon yellow, Payne's grey, alizarin crimson, raw sienna, burnt umber, and light red. I've got the water jar here with a nice lip, which will take off a fair bit of the water off the hake. The rest of it I'll take off with a tea towel there. This one's, I've had this ages now, and it's going a bit hard. I need a new one. Not very absorbent, but I'll see how I get on. So 15 by 11 Fabriano watercolour paper fixed to this plywood with these clips there. So another quick look at the photograph before I start. So it's going to be a very limited palette, this one. I mean, these sorts of things, ultramarine and Payne's grey I like to use, getting really nice and dark. Obviously, if you want to create a light, because obviously the paper's already white, you can't get any lighter than that. But the way of getting a sort of light impression is to put the immediate bit next to it dark to help with the real contrast. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to start with giving the paper a good soak with clear water all over, maybe just a touch more. I don't want this drying before I finish with the sky bit, because I want it to blend in nice and soft. I don't want any hard edges. So I'm going to start off with raw sienna and just put that in, fairly random, no real thought to it. Then clean the brush, and I'm going to go ultramarine and Payne's grey. Now I want the light area sort of here, so I'm going to push in something like that, and then come over from the other side. Back into the paint again, nice and strong. Bit of water, not too much, but plenty of paint, because the paper's so wet you need plenty of paint to compensate for all the water on the paper. And then just brush it in from both sides, just making sure you don't go through that central area. I'm going to go into this time. I've already got a bit of blue on the brush. I'm just going straight into Payne's grey, nice and dark. Again, just being careful I'm not touching that central area. That'll do. Now, again, not touching, not cleaning the brush, just going straight into the paint again. Payne's grey, ultramarine. I'm going to put in the about 2/3 of the way up. I'm going to put the horizon line. In fact, there's a natural break there. I might just put it about there, where it just show up better. And then just I only want these small because they're quite far away. Little reflection will do any harm. Oh, yeah, that ain't coming off very well, is it, as a reflection? Yeah, that's a bit better. Just put down a little reflection underneath, and then still into the paint again. Nice and fairly strong. And obviously, I want it pretty strong now to contrast against the light of the sky. So I'm not going to pull any reflection down on there, because looking at the reference photo, that's just a sort of, that's just this area, just a shiny bit reflecting the light of the sky, almost blinding you. So I'm just going to leave that. Just make sure it's nice and straight. And just see how they're all the same height. I like to just try and vary the height a bit, even if it's not actually the same. But just in front of that, in fact, I won't put it in. There is a little sort of little island there, but it'll just make it look a bit untidy. Just watching that water at the bottom of the page, because if you, it tends to seep up. I'm just wondering where to put these reflections in. You know what, I'm just going to put them in anyway, so I think it'll just look better with the reflections. That'll do, I don't want to go too mad with that bit. Now next, coming into the foreground, about there I think. Again, I haven't cleaned the brush or anything, but I've got plenty of paint, nice strong paint on. I've got just enough water to hold all the hairs together. And then it comes out to about there. Now, I want this stronger, but I think the paper's just starting to dry a little bit, so if it was still really wet I'd have dried it a bit more, but it's coming off the brush fairly well. So that's that. And then as I'm doing it, I'm just pulling down the reflections into the paint again. Pull down the reflections as you're doing it, because the paper, if it had dried, these would now be hard. You'd have hard edges in K instead of these nice soft edges. You might want hard edges, it's entirely up to you. But again, I'm trying to sort of vary the height of this as I come across. And as it goes over there, it just lifts up a bit more. You notice I've still only used just the three colours. Raw sienna, which you can still see in the lighter area. I could have not bothered with the raw sienna and just left it white. It might have looked even more brighter, but just adds a bit of variety to it. And just putting down these reflections as I'm going along. Now you can see how the paper's stretched. See how it's coming off the board here. I sort of stretch it. People say, well, don't you stretch the paper before I start? That's why I wet it all over to start with, and it sort of stretches as I'm painting. You can stretch it before if you want, just let it to dry and then go straight at it, and you ain't got to do this, refix it halfway through. It's entirely up to you. Some people wet it, some people like to stick it in the, soak it in the sink or something. Whatever floats your boat. Again, so I haven't, like I say, there's just enough water to keep the hairs together. What I might do is just dip the very tip in, just to free it up a little bit. See how the paint, so I just dip the very tip of the hairs into the water. It just sort of loosens it up, and it just flows off the brush a lot easier. So now I'm going to put in the twigs and branches and stuff. Now you can use a rigger to do this if you want. In fact, I'll switch to the rigger in a minute, just to put the finer branches in. And then, as I'm going along, just putting the reflection down in the water. They don't have to be exact, as long as they're there or thereabouts, the reflections, that'll be good enough. I've switched to the number 3 rigger, just to put in some of the finer bits, and then just reflecting some of them in. Again, moving to the right a little bit, there's a few more ones now. And obviously in the lighter there it stands out. Now if you sort of do it like hit and miss, just keep miss some of the paper. It looks like the sort of sunlight sort of blinding you as it's catching the twigs and branches and stuff. And again, while I'm doing that, just putting down the reflections. Doesn't have to be bang on, as long as it's something like so, like yeah, there's quite a few down there now. Switch to the rigger. And some of the finer stuff. Put a few down there. A few more down there. And I'm just going to put a big one out there. With some of those. Again, don't put them all nice and parallel, sort of crisscross them and put some in front of the others. It just makes it look a bit more realistic. And then just there, I might have another big one, just giving off something like that. And again, pull down the reflection while I'm doing it, otherwise I might forget. Back to the rigger, plenty of water, and just give it a twist, comes to a point, and then just flick in a few little twigs and branches, and I just want to be careful I don't overdo it there. I might just leave it like that. Now I don't want the branches and trunks just hanging there. I'm just going to sort of cover over a little bit. And again, pulling down the reflections as I'm doing it. There in the eyes. Maybe just flicking the odd bit of grass. Yeah, don't forget the reflections. Now down here there's just a bit of a shoreline. Just dipping the very tips of the hike in again, just to bring the brushes, just making sure those brushes, the hairs, are always nice together. So basically then you can go like that and the hairs aren't separating all over the place. Just experiment. I know it can be a real pain, and it's awkward at first. Trying to have just the right amount of water on the brush. You'll get the hang of it. Just keep practicing. So this is the foreground shore now. can see just like some little bits of just little pebbles reflecting in the sun. Just keeping really small. Just little stones on the shore, but I can just about see the sun reflecting off them in the photo. I'll show the photo in a minute. Back to the rigger. Before I put my hand on that paper, I want to make sure the paint's dry, otherwise I'll make a right mess of it. Switch to the hairdryer. Back to the rigger, I'll just put a couple of birds. Up there. And then over in this corner, just pop your signature. And I'll call that one finished. So here's our finished painting. So let's just have a quick look at the photograph and see how we did it. So the first thing I wanted to do was create the impression of this light that comes down the picture like that. You can see by using the raw sienna, or I could have not bothered with raw sienna and just left it white, and then just brushing in from either side, how it helps create this sense of light coming down the middle. And obviously the darker you get it on either side, the bigger the illusion you can create. And then once the trees are in, you must remember to do those reflections to help create the impression of water. Like I say, the reflections, they don't have to be absolutely bang on, but as long as they're there or thereabouts, you can sort of quickly create the illusion of water without too much effort really. And we can see these little highlights in the foreground, little stones and pebbles. They're not difficult to do, just get it in nice and dark, and then when it's sort of half dry, just go in with a piece of plastic card or a knife or something, and just scrape them out, just keeping them nice and small. And then you can see where I've sort of hit and miss with these strokes up here. Just helps create that sensation of light coming through, sort of behind the trees. And then a couple of birds just helps put a bit of life in the thing. Well, thanks for watching. Keep practicing, and I'll see you again soon.